Welcome back. The Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro.
It was a ghastly tale of a winter's night. One of an invisible killer and a crime perpetrated on the pavement along Briar Road. As the victim lay at death's door, the mystery of just who had stabbed the young lady from behind had been resolved. But no sooner had my friend saved that Eastern Exchange student from his harrowing plight than in the dim, flickering shadows of gaslight did a second bizarre crime rend the stillness of that very night. I dare say most can still recall the sensational headlines of the day. Haunted apartment of death, the condemned criminal's curse, the dread demon of coal gas. Yet, though the great detective had at once discerned the truth upon his arrival at the scene, it only proved to be the overture that announced the rising of the curtain on a most tragic play.
Curious. Very curious. My name is Ryunosuke Naruhodo. I'm a fledgling lawyer, just starting out on my journey. 6 months ago, I arrived as a visiting student of law, having made the long voyage across the sea from the Empire of Japan to here, London, England. I like that introduction. The illustrations in that introduction, it really gives off the vibe of legit illustrations that would have been in the original Holmes stories when they were first published. And on the way, in quite extraordinary circumstances, I made the acquaintance of a world-famous detective. Currently, I reside in the attic of the detective's own lodgings, from where I run my legal consultancy of sorts. I've successfully defended a number of clients in Britain's highest court, the Old Bailey. But since a particularly grueling and unforgettable legal battle 4 months ago now, I haven't returned to the courtroom. In truth, I lost my right to return. That epic trial was just one small part of an epic tale. A tale which was now about to awaken from slumber. Thanks to a letter that arrived this morning from my homeland. Oh. But I'm hungry first. What a delicious smell wafting up the stairs. Must be nearly time for breakfast. Better go down to Mr. Sholmes' suite and say good morning to the great detective and his flatmate. Ah, so this does kind of tie together, doesn't it? Like, this has to have, taken, this must be taking place live 4 months after the, Case 5 of the first game. Although we are still probably about to flash back to, immediately after the, sorry, Case 4 of the first. God, they really didn't spend that many cases in London, have we? Ah, Runo, good. I was just about to call up to you. The bacon's ready. Good morning, Iris. It smells delicious as usual. Before we eat, though, I have some news. I had a surprise this morning. The word, Mr. Naruhodo. Uh-oh. This could be just the abstruse thing for my pre-breakfast stagnation-repelling mental stimulation, my dear fellow. Morning to you too, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, yes, I see. So that's it. Personal space. The truth is as clear to me as day. My faculties of observation have revealed it again. What are you talking about? You, Mr. Naruhodo. You have this very morning met with a surprise. Well, is that not the case? Really, my dear fellow, it barely warrants explanation. Firstly, your hair is particularly unkempt, somewhat reminiscent of a bird's nest. Secondly, you have neglected to fasten the third button of your jacket. Clearly, when considered together, these two facts point to you having been flustered this morning. Can I talk now? Well, of course. Though I don't look for admiration, you understand? My hair always looks like this. It's been this way since I first met you. Oh, it has? And the button was ripped off last night, if you remember. By you. Harley pulled your button off? Ah, yes, I recall the incident now. It was after supper, was it not? As the evening advanced, I picked up my violin and began to play the wailing notes of a haunting time. But then, to my utter dismay, the third string snapped. Why did it have to happen? Why? Little wonder then that in my vexation I grabbed the first button I saw and ripped it from its proper place. Well, I'd like it back now, please. It's troubling me that I can't fasten my jacket. It's troubling me that you expect me to know where it is. Somewhere thereabouts on the floor, one presumes. Helpful. What matters at the present time, my dear fellow, is simply whether or not my deduction was unerring. But Hurley, Bruno said it when he came in, didn't he? I had a surprise this morning. Good old post-hoc deduction. Well, that really is a surprise. Yes, this man is the pride of the British Empire. The famous consulting detective, Mr. Herlock Sholmes. There can't be a single person in the world who doesn't know his name. Alright then, enough of this silly conversation. Come and eat this bacon before it goes cold. And I have a new herbal tea for you to try too. My latest special blend. And here we have Iris Wilson, Mr. Sholmes' lodger and companion. A truly exceptional young girl who's the author of a highly successful serialization here in London. Yes, The Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, as published in Rand's magazine. So, Mr. Naruhodo, why don't you put us out of our misery? What surprised you this fine morning? Well, I received a letter from Japan. Oh, from Susie, you mean? Was it? Really? That's right. And she had some rather startling news, in fact. Ah, intriguing indeed. You must tell us all about it over breakfast. Oh yes, what fun! Converse. First I need to look for my dang button. Where's my bloody button? Ah yes, the huge metal chest with the lace cloth laid on it, being used as a table for tea and coffee. It's very sturdy, that's for sure. And it's firmly locked shut. That chest contains my father's detailed records of Holmes's many cases. Yes, so I've been led to believe. Though, personally, I've never actually seen inside. Out. And that's the way it will stay. Those papers are a secret between Daddy and me. If you go opening it uninvited, you might find yourself being bitten. What? Is there a beast inside there or something? When it gets to this time of year, Londoners seem to leave their herds light all day long. And I love it. There's something very relaxing about watching the flames flit and dance about. But a fireplace in days of summertime is a waste of space. Really, no use at all. Rather like a great detective in days of no crimes and no criminals. Early. Consider this. Instead of a fireplace, a frost place. That's my latest idea. Extraordinary hearth from which emanates a cool breeze in the hot summer months. What do you think? Ah, yes, Herlock invents air conditioning. I think if you invented such a thing, your name would go down in history. The principle is extremely simple. One must, of course, light a cold fire in the hearth. Yes, of course! Brilliant! The trouble is, none of the fires I build ever burn cold. How it taunts me. So, as you British say, it's a bit of a damp squib. Books, papers, scientific implements. These shelves are stuffed to the gunnels. Miss Susanna wouldn't be able to help herself if she were here. She can't stand mess. Susie might not be able to stand mess, but she wouldn't dare touch those shelves. Oh? Why not? Everything's in intricate balance. Nobody spends ages on it. If you were to touch even one thing, the whole lot would come tumbling down. Ah. Susie noticed that it was a very delicate arrangement right from the outset. Make it sound like a meeting of great minds. But the truth is, Mr. Sholmes just needs to tidy up. Yeah, honestly. Susie does know her stuff. She can look at that and say, this is ass, but if I touch this even remotely, the whole thing is going to implode. These are different pieces of evidence from cases you've solved, aren't they, Mr. Sholmes? Not quite, Mr. Naruhodo. Not quite. These trinkets are a selection from cases I've solved with particular aplomb. Yeah, souvenirs of my successes. Memories, Mr. Naruhodo. Memories. Oh, I'm rusty on my Holmes lore. The one thing I immediately recognize from that collection there is a bust of Napoleon. Really? So tell me about the case in which the bust of Napoleon featured. I forget. Memories, he says. Wonderful, Mr. Sholmes. Wonderful. I do want to know about the bust of Napoleon, though. Ah, yes. This is where you note down ideas, isn't it, Iris? What's in the melting pot today? The blue carbuncle. Yes, it's from a case of theft that Hurley solved ages ago. Theft of a precious stone. A carbuncle's another name for a garnet, you see. Especially if it's cut with a rounded top. Oh, really? And this garnet was blue, was it? Well, that's the thing. They're usually red. No blue garnets have ever been discovered. Oh. So who knows what the stolen gemstone actually was? That's the real mystery of the case. A proper Herlock Sholmes conundrum, huh? Alright, I think that's all there is to see here. I want to find my damn button. That machine really is imposing, isn't it? I can never remember its name. Hurley calls it his great analytoscope. He can analyze anything at all. That doesn't really help me. What does analyzing something even mean? Ah, an extremely astute question, Mr. Naruhodo. Sorry? Well, as Iris said, my machine here spits out analysis results of anything with which you care to present it. But how to interpret those results, that's the key. And I confess, I have no idea. Clearly, I'm going to have to construct a great analytoscope to solve the problem. That might not help. That's when you're fucking around with like ChatGPT or something. You said, give me human readable results. Tell me about this like you're talking to a third grader. Ah yes, Mr. Sholmes' faithful musical companion. Wasn't this violin made by somebody famous? Yes, it's a Stradivarius. Oh. I'm afraid you'd have to save up for 100 years before you could afford one, Runo. But didn't you buy it for a song, Mr. Sholmes? I found it at a pawnbroker among the forfeited articles. And clearly said Stradivarius on the label. What? The ignorant broker had no idea of its true value, you see. So I paid a mere 55 shillings for it. Yes, I have something of a turn for shopping. Herlock Sholmes, bargain hunter. But is it really a Stradivarius then? But of course, my dear fellow. It said so on the label. I think perhaps the ignorant broker had something of a turn for selling. Ah, yes. Stradivarius. It's so helpfully brand labeled here and all that jazz. This is Iris' side of the place. Typewriter? I can type with my eyes shut, you know. I can believe it. When a deadline's approaching, you sound like a Gatling gun. It reminds me of a dream I had the other day. It was such a funny one, it woke me actually. I was typing for a whole hour in the pitch black, but I didn't make a single mistake. That's incredible. But then, when I got live, I found that there wasn't any paper in the machine. Oh. Now I wonder if I'd actually been typing at all. I think you might just have fallen asleep on the job. Honestly. There's so many different bottles up there on the charming little set of white shelves. Oh, do be careful, Runo. You mustn't try the contents of any of those bottles, even if you're hungry. I won't do something stupid like that. I'm not a child, you know. Hurley has. Well, I wish I could say the same for Hurley, yep. The other day he polished off a full bottle of one of my alkaloids. He what? He said he was hungry. I'll be extra careful. Nice. That's Hurley. I look forward to finding out what aroma your tea will have, Iris, every single day. Well, I infuse a different concoction of herbs from the garden every time, so it's never the same twice. When you call it a concoction, it sounds more like a science experiment than something for tea time. It is a science experiment. Oh, yeah. That's because different blends can have very different properties. Some calm you down, some make you feel jolly, some give you energy. Today's particular blend is something quite special, so you're really in for a treat. That sounds ominous. Oh, not finding my button anywhere. Alright. Oh, so you have scale balances in Japan too, do you? Well, yeah, but nothing like the old Bailey's huge example. The thing about those scales is they're only ever in balance right at the start of a trial, aren't they? Otherwise, they always seem to be hanging one way or another. I noticed that exact same thing. Huh. Oh, Mr. Sholmes, about this. Shh, the word. Ah, yes, I see. This would be a collar for a breed of miniature canine with a particularly long neck, and for winter use. Actually, it's the armband I always wear that symbolizes my role as a defense lawyer. Precisely, which leads us to but one conclusion. Your arm is, in fact, the particularly long neck for a miniature canine. Wait, what? I'm starting to wish I'd never shown him this now. That man's barking mad. Alright. Let's actually talk about the plot here. This is a letter that arrived from Japan this morning, by international post. Oh, how lovely. Look at Susie's beautiful handwriting. I wish I could read it. Ah, written in Japanese. And how is your judicial assistant faring, may I ask? She's very well, thank you. In fact, according to what she's written, she actually appeared as a lawyer at the Japanese Supreme Court and won a case. Ah, really? Oh, isn't she wonderful? Cut above your good self, my dear fellow. I've won cases too, you know. Apparently, Mr. Natsume appeared at the trial as a witness. Natsume. No, I don't recall that name. Of course you do. We helped the man. Twice. You know, in those 2 cases that took place on Briar Road 6 months ago? We are gonna flashback. Ah, the mustached, twitchy man with the somewhat feline eyes and the mustache. You did have 2 mustaches, Hurley. Yes, who could forget those 2 cases? They made a very deep impression on me, clearly. Although I must confess, the details are a little hazy now. A very deep impression they made on you, clearly. So, what was this startling news penned by Miss Susato? Do you remember the case of the haunted lodgings, Mr. Sholmes? Ah, yes, and it's very interesting, you know. I don't feel entirely uncertain that a case of that nature did not occur. He's totally forgotten, then. Anyway, in her letter, Susato asked that we read over her case notes again and investigate further. Though it took place half a year ago, for what purpose? So something that Mr. Natsume said to her, apparently. Suggested that the real reason why she was called back to Japan so suddenly might have something to do with that case of the haunted lodgings. Oh. Mr. Natsume's return to Japan. Mr. Uzato's father questioned him further on the case, she says. Something Mr. Natsume said appeared to trouble Professor Mikotoba, prompting him to send that telegram. Oh, that case, yes. It was very strange, wasn't it? Yeah. And I had compiled the whole story into a nice, neat manuscript ready for publication, too. Then Hurley here was all funny about it, remember? It was very mean. That story must not be published, you said. Very mysteriously as well. Really? I said that. Are you sure? Do you perhaps know something about it as well, Mr. Sholmes? About why Miss Susanna was suddenly told 4 months ago that she had to return to Japan? It's been 4 months now since we waved Susie off at Dover. It was such a shock, wasn't it? The way she just suddenly announced that she had to go back to Japan. Indeed it was. Due to a telegram she received from her homeland, I believe. That's right. Telling her to return urgently. Yes, because her father had passed away. No, it just said he was suffering from a high fever, the cause of which was unknown. He's not dead. But according to this letter, that news about her father's fever was just a ruse. A ruse? So Susie's daddy lied to her so that she'd make the voyage back home? Why would he do that? I have to admit, I have absolutely no idea. But she believes it's almost certainly related to the case of the haunted lodgings. I know of this case? Summoning her back to Japan so suddenly like that. I wonder what Miss Susato's father is hiding. Hurley, do you know what it's all about? He's got his jacket on. Ah, well, who can say? What? But you said... Please, I have engagements, my dear fellow. My calendar is quite surprisingly full today. And a stringent analysis of the matter would be excessive, I fear, even if I were quite at leisure. So, man the fort of my absence, won't you, Iris? I will, Hurley. Don't worry. I'll see you later. The bow. He scuttled off rather quickly there. Quite suddenly, too. I think perhaps Professor Mikotoba isn't the only person hiding something here. Soseki-san was involved in 2 cases, but only one of them was forbidden from being published. By, of all people, Mr. Sholmes. If this does tie into the bigger scope of the plot here, then that's... Like, I remember when this game first came out, I remember the sort of surprise and kind of why feeling of, really? We're back here? This is a case of the sequel, despite taking place right after the case for the first game. But if the way they're explaining it so far, it makes sense why they'd hold back on it. It's Iris, are they? Susie's case notes. The notes about the case? That's right. Susie and I compiled them together. The case of the haunted lodgings. Do you want to read them, Runo? Let's do it. Absolutely. Thank you, Iris. Ooh. I have no idea what secrets could still be hiding in the shadows of this case. But perhaps if I read over the notes again, something might come to light. That's the spirit. And so, Iris and I decided to read over the case notes again together. Everything from what happened to our investigation in that fierce battle in court that followed, living every detail. Just need to find a clue, and I have all the time in the world. Because of course, I'm no longer allowed to practice law in the courts of Great Britain. It was 6 months ago, a mysterious incident that unfolded on the wintry streets of London. Because of the events of the Case 5. revealing government secrets in live court. I believe was the official cause of that, if I recall. If memory serves me correctly. I have been watching a lot of Iron Chef lately. A young woman was found lying on the snowy pavement of Briar Road with a knife in her back. Fortunately, her life was spared. She was unconscious for several days following the incident. The fog was thick and nobody saw her attacker, but by a cruel twist of fate, a visiting Japanese student was walking behind her at the time and was duly arrested. That man was Soseki-san, and the man who effected his arrest was Mr. Sholmes. Believing in our compatriot's innocence, Suzato-san and I decided to represent Soseki-san in court. And after a grueling trial of many twists and turns, we finally managed to prove his innocence. Joyful, joyous, jubilant, jubilation was the man's reaction after the trial, but his jubilant jubilation was short-lived. He received a telegram from Mr. Sholmes the following morning. The victim of the Briar Road stabbing has regained consciousness. Hurry to Bart's at once. Ah. So Suzato-san and I summoned a hansom and headed immediately to the hospital. Oh, so we're picking up right here. House. 21st February, St. Bart's Hospital Recovery Ward. There you are at last. Good morning, Mr. Sholmes. I think not. Oh. You're late. What on earth took you so long? Your telegram only arrived at 5 o'clock, Mr. Sholmes, and it's a 20-minute ride to the hospital. That's right, and it's 5:30 now. I think we've made very good time. The time's utterly irrelevant. The fact is, I have been waiting for what has felt like an eternity. In point of fact, I myself was woken at 4 this morning by a telegram boy. Feeling it was somewhat unjust that I alone had been roused at such an hour, I sent one to you. Well, thanks for that. Anyway, you're here now, so Victor is over there. She's only just regained consciousness. Oh, there she is. You should introduce yourselves, and I shall observe from here. So, that's the lady who was found on the snow-covered pavement with a knife in her back. Her name is... yes, here we are. Miss Green. It's not easy being green. This rounded wooden figure isn't most charming, isn't it? Is it? I don't think it's a decoration, Mr. Naruhodo. It's an artist's mannequin, I believe. Used when practicing sketching the human form in different poses. Really? It's not exactly what you'd call a typical figure for that purpose, though, is it? No, I suppose not. I confess I've never seen one quite so full-figured before. But if you want to draw a full-figured person, it's the right tool for the job. Yeah, based. I gotta learn somewhere. Any reference is a good reference. What the heck is this? Look, there's a photograph of this frame here. Oh, man. Oh, yes. It's a picture of a young gentleman. Looks to be about the same age as Miss Green, I would say. Perhaps the young woman's special someone, do you think? My, Mr. Naruhodo, I didn't know you had a sense for the manners of the heart. Not in the least. I sincerely said the first thing I thought of. Art last, Miss Green? Let me examine you. A mouse, Mr. Naruhodo. An enormous mouse. Vermin in the hospital. It doesn't seem the best. It looks like a very healthy specimen, doesn't it? It's very plump. I'm not sure we can say that's down to the excellence of this facility, if that's what you were thinking. It's friend-shaped. That must be a bag of Miss Green's personal belongings. She would have been brought directly here after she was found stabbed on the pavement, though. I expect a friend or a family member probably brought some things for her. Alright, then let's see what's inside. Change of clothes, no doubt, and... No, Mr. Naruhodo. You must never scrutinize a young maiden's personal belongings. The young maiden might have chocolates or biscuits or caramel. If you're hungry, Mr. Naruhodo, just say so. Sheesh. Ah, this looks like the patient's treatment notes. Let's see. Do not feed. What? What is this place, a zoo? You know, I seem to remember seeing an almost identical sign in our local park. For the pigeons, yes. This is the person. Poor woman. I hope she hasn't read this. That's utterly weird. Ah. Treatment notes for whoever is occupying this bed. Let's see. Do not permit to run around the hospital. The patient doesn't seem to be here at the moment, so... He or she is probably running around the hospital then. Oh dear. How worrying. What's worrying is why they haven't discharged the patient yet. The patient is just the mouse. That's all it is. There are all sorts of medicines in this cabinet. Look. I'm not sure if it's safe leaving them in reach of everyone like this. Yes, you're right. I can imagine if you were peckish, you might try a whole bottle or two. Well, at least there seems to be a little lock to secure the cabinet doors. I don't imagine that would stop you if you were hungry. I worry that you'd break the lock. Hunger doesn't turn me into a criminal, you know, Mr. Zato. Honestly. Lots of bottles in that cabinet, aren't there? Do you think it's safe to keep it like that? If you were a patient here, I feel sure you'd take some medicine by mistake when you were half asleep. That is a worry. At least the cabinet has a lock if it's only a flimsy-looking one. Bop! Oh, I've no doubt you'd managed to unlock that somehow while you were half asleep as well. There are limits even to what I can do when I'm half asleep, you know, Mr. Zato. Honestly. Good morning. Huh? Hello. I'm, Ryunosuke Naruhodo of the Empire of Japan. Oh no, was it your knife then? Are you the man who... No, I'm a lawyer. She's got a key on her vest. I'm Susato Mikitomo. Pleased to meet you. Oh no, was it your knife then? Are you the one? No, I assure you. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. We heard that you'd regained consciousness and wanted to come to give you our best wishes. Best wishes? For me? Thank you. I'm Olive Green. I'm an artist. Well, no, that's not right, is it? What I mean is, I'm trying to be an artist. Well, what I really mean is, I desperately want to be an artist. The truth is, I don't have any talent. I know I don't. It's no wonder I was stabbed in the back. I don't think that's related, actually. Gosh, this young woman seems to bend over backwards to put herself down. Seeing as we're here, we should ask her about what happened from her perspective, I suppose. To suddenly be struck in the back by a blade as you were walking along the pavement. What a terrible experience you had, Miss Green. It was so cold that day. The fog was so thick, I couldn't see a thing. That was 4 days ago now, I think. Is that right? Yes, that's right. I'm afraid you've been comatose all that time. But the case has been solved, hasn't it? Well, I've been here in the hospital, I mean. Indeed it has, my dear madam. Spectacularly by none other than I, Herlock Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes, as you well know, it was Mr. Naruhodo's hard work in court that solved the case. Are you yet to hear what happened, Miss Green? Yes, I'm afraid so. A gentleman from the police force is supposed to be coming to fill me in shortly. Oh, I see. Me coming round seems to have made everyone frantically busy. I'm so sorry. I should never have regained consciousness. It was selfish of me. Oh no! Oh no! We're also relieved that you're on the mend, Miss Green. Really we are. With that kind of attitude, maybe her surname should be Blue instead. Not green. Honestly. So, you're an artist, are you, Miss Green? Oh no. Oh, I couldn't possibly claim that. I'm a fledgling artist at best. I mean, I'm a student of art, really, at the Thorndike Academy of Fine Arts. Oh, that's something. Oh my, an Academy of Fine Arts? Great Britain is such a wonderful country. Tell me, Miss Green, do you live here? Do you live hereabouts? Oh no, actually. I don't deserve it, but I have a little flat on Brixton Road. I see. How very interesting. Oh no. Is it? Brixton is some 10 stops away on the underground from here. And Thorndike Academy is a mere 3-minute walk from Brixton Town Centre. Does that matter, Mr. Sholmes? Perhaps not, but Briar Road is a far less salubrious part of the town by comparison, dwelt in by those of inferior means, including the maleficent Mr. Mustache. Inferior means? I suppose Soseki-san does fit the bill in that regard. Not exactly rolling in dough if he's in a basement flat with no windows. It struck me as something out of the ordinary for a young fine arts student to be walking in such a district. That's all. What's this? She suddenly clammed up. Mr. Sholmes, you shouldn't be ashamed of yourself, prying into a young maiden's private affairs. Oh, dear me. Do forgive me. Goofy air. If you don't mind. I'm being discharged shortly, so I need to pack up my things. Oh, yes, of course. We won't keep you. Thank you so much, Miss Green. That is odd. Is that Mr. Naruhodo here? Mr. Naruhodo. Naruhodo now? Well, looking for Mr. Naruhodo, the lawyer. That's me, but... Ah, Mr. Naruhodo, good. This is for you. It's a message from Mr. Saucy Nutmeg. Mr. Natsume? Sent a message? To me? Why would a policeman be delivering a message from Mr. Natsume? Exactly. What's going on? What's a Scotland Yard constable doing playing delivery boy at this time in the morning? Oh, what are you waiting for? Let me see that. Oh. I can't read Japanese. Well, it is most unexpected. Just kidding, it's written in English. Something wrong, Mr. Sholmes? Something wrong, Mr. Sholmes, he says. Have you not seen this note? You took it from me before I could read it. No, how could I have? It would seem that London's criminals have no intention of letting the great detective rest. A new case calls. A case of murder, no less. We must depart at once. Murder! Call a cab. Time is of the essence. But the trouble is, we've yet to read Mr. Natsume's note. I was thinking we ought to pay him a visit at his... We ought to pay him a visit at his lodgings, but once we did. That will be entirely convenient. Convenient? What do you mean? It's all here in the note, my dear fellows. Murder we must investigate. Took place at Mr. Mustache's lodgings. Wait, what? I'll hail a fiacre at once. Fiacre? Is that how you pronounce that? It was only yesterday that Soseki-san was in court and we were dispelling doubts about his innocence. And now, the very next day, was a murder at the man's own address? He may very well be the unluckiest man alive. So it seemed to us at the time. But we were soon to discover it was worse than we thought. Curious. Ah. What on earth? Oh my. The gentleman is deceased without question. He's dead. Look, I'm steward Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Mr. Natsume. Mr. Natsume. Oh, why? Why is this happening? Why to me? I've only just got out of court. Yesterday. I was finally home after 2 days of misery. And I wake up the next day to this. No early bird should catch a worm like this. Woeful worm without wiggle. No wiggle. I see you're in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Mustache. Ah! Not the horrible airlock Sholmes. His eye twitch. Shoo! Shove off. Show yourself the door. I never invited you. Mr. Sholmes came here with us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume. I'm entirely at your disposal, Mr. Mustache. What can I do for you? Hi, Gregson. Here they are, already. The busy bodies. Ah, Inspector Gregson. What a pleasant surprise. Pleasant, is it? Gives me heartburn every time I see your face at a crime scene, Sholmes. Ah, I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is a result of your excessive consumption of fried food. Good morning, Inspector. This is a crime scene. Don't you go touching anything. Or good morning to you too, Sunshine. All right. Roy, sit hands off. Gonna mess up my crime scene. No, I just wanted to look, that's all. No chance. I know your kind. I messed it up just by looking at it. Someone's in a bad mood. There's certainly some bad air in here, isn't there? Alright, it sounds like I'd better talk to the inspector first and try to curry some favor. Where's our luck? Alright then. So, Inspector, what's the victim's name? Who was he? Mr. William Shamspeare. He was the lodger here. You can probably tell he was an actor. Bit of a dead loss as it happened, so just dead. Mr. Shamspeare was the landlord, old Mr. Garrideb, and the other lodger, Mr. Natsume, who found him. Ella didn't rise at his usual hour, so Garrideb got worried and kicked the door down. But doesn't Mr. Garrideb have a bad leg? Ah, yeah, you're right there. It's that jittery Japanese hunchback over there who actually did the kicking. Really? Soseki-san? Victim was pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside for petty crimes. Oh. Shamspeare. Yeah, no money, no place to go, no friends. It's only acquaintances with the people in this house. Miserable life and a miserable end to it. So what exactly is Mr. Natsume still doing here? He's not involved in the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away for the crime scene? Well, I'm not saying it because the fellow looks odd or anything. That he acts suspicious. I thought it would be prudent to take a statement from the cohabiter. Very subtle, Gregson. You nearly said culprit there, didn't you? Oh dear. Natsume appears to be under suspicion again. It certainly seems that way. He does just come across as such an odd fellow, doesn't he? Poor man. How unfortunate. Anyway, I can't say much until the coroner gets here. I don't think the fellow's been gone that long. Body's still warm. Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to touch a dead body. What a terrible thing to have happened. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested for the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. This existence of excruciating experiences. So the victim lived here on the ground floor, and your room is just 1 story up, isn't it? Yes, that's right. In a way, we were neighbors, I suppose. So did you know the victim? Were you friends? You good? Bro? Or Natsume has been vibrating here for 20 minutes off screen while I had the video recording paused. What's the matter with Soseki-san now? Wasn't an enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken by it? Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But did he ever invite me to his room? Never! On my honor, I swear it. I didn't ask that. What an extreme reaction. You're probably wishing you'd never asked now, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? When he found him here, I felt wretched. Which is why I sent word asking for you to come. Through that inspector over there. Yeah, there's Holmes. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Huh. You'd only observe to know it, my dear fellow. Investigating, naturally. There's nothing natural about that pose. Mr. Sholmes, have you made some miraculous discovery? Patience, my dear madam, patience. We've not been here in this room 5 minutes. So far, all I've managed to deduce is what actually happened. Oh, is that all? Wait, what? My goodness. But isn't that everything we need to know, Mr. Sholmes? Now you propose the idea. Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see it that way. At the present time, I have managed to draw 2 incontrovertible conclusions. The first, that there was a physical struggle here last night in which the victim fought for his life. Ah! Ah! Mr. Natsume, what's wrong? Is something Mr. Sholmes said significant somehow? No, don't mind me. Forget I was here. Oh boy. And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air here last night that passed the victim's lips. Nonsense! Ah! You are not helping yourself here. All right, Mr. Natsume. Why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? No, please, but I'm not here. Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant. Impossible to ignore. You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail. Oh, don't mind if I do, but of course. Let the theatrical tragedy before us be unveiled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure, in 2 acts. You've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our eyes this time? So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Herlock Sholmes is logic and reasoning spectacular. Act 1. Oh boy, here we go. First deduction has been so long, I missed this. Cause of death. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Oh, reaction. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap. Meaningful? Indubitably. Why is the soap set so purposefully upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. Eye starting, it appears the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in a deadly battle for his life. With soap? Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. When London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. The soap and the lather about the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was very clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of foul soap. Though personally, I have a greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax, of course. You what? You were just gonna let that comment hang there? Alright. Curious. Suicide or murder? Cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? Oh, wiggle wiggle. The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die here alone? The single teacup suggests the answer. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. A careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. I am loving seeing Soseki in a deduction setting. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. Wow, that lock is very broken, though forced open now. At the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior soap, from whence wafted an inferior scent. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. He could take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on its way up to the hereafter. Interesting that we're going to disprove that fact. This concludes the final act of Sherlock Sholmes' great deduction. I don't suppose it's going to be like the Case 5 Egg Benedict deduction where it goes on a wild turn. There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed to identifying just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think the man would have eaten soap? It is quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. It is a curious thing, but to one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. How extraordinary! In truth, I have tried a little soap myself in the past. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. And did it? As I writhed in agony on the floor and spit the contents of my stomach. Yes, I believe it did. Effective. The experience taught me a very valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. It has an unpleasant taste that leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend. You heard it here. Do not eat soap. Wise words. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. Even if you did. Recommended. There's something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh, what's that? It's Mr. Natsume. Ah! I couldn't help noticing him shuddering and quivering out of the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Sholmes' deductions touched a nerve somehow. Nonsense. Well, that clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective's deductions may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. Yes, Mr. Sholmes' observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. It's a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it in at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yes, we must pick out the key words in Mr. Sholmes' quite brilliant deductions, and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we can do that... Yeah, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Sholmes meant to say in the first place. In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Sherlock Sholmes, this logic and reasoning spectacular. Act 1. Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Hyper-focusing. And setting his thoughts down a very obtuse pattern. Obtuse direction. Alright. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, one half of a sizable fall of soap. Meaningful? Indubitably. Why is this soap set so purposely upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes. Could be that the man was about to eat it. Of course. The fork reveals the answer. And look. Well, you can't deny that a fork implies the man was eating something, or about to eat something. Yes, that's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, I should prefer to use a fork than to attempt it with chopsticks. And of course, only half of the bar of soap is left on the plate. Or might there not be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap? Oh. A fork. Okay, can we still examine? Do you think he was drinking tea with his soap? The cup's empty, so there's no way of knowing. Ah, how about this for an idea? Perhaps the cup was full of water. He was dissolving soap in it so you could gulp as much down as possible. Please remember that he may not have actually been the soap lover he's been made out to be. Okay, so we can only approach this angle here. Huh. Suppose you'd eat soap with a fork, wouldn't you? I don't think it's a question of which implement you'd use. You shouldn't eat soap, full stop. Then why? Why did the man have a fork in his hand? Oh dear. I understand your frustration, Mr. Naruhodo, but please don't take it out on me. Point is, if we decide the man used this fork to eat the soap, we wouldn't be changing Mr. Sholmes' deduction. So we really ought to consider some other clues. What's curious is that we can't actually examine the plate or anything else. Like, is the teacup our only clue here? Like, is this the...
Take that!
Nope. What else can we examine? Here we have an empty teacup within arm's reach of the victim. Clearly, if poison was the cause of death, the possibility that it was administered in his drink can't be overlooked. My dear fellow, possibilities are endless. The question we are currently pondering is whether or not this vivacious-looking victim ate the soap. Ah, until we've established that, I suggest you keep your possibilities to yourself. Ah! Looks like I was getting ahead of myself. Vivacious might not be the most appropriate term to describe a dead man, Mr. Sholmes. Oh, hello. I see you there. Look, there's more soap on the floor here. Mr. Shamster must have really loved this stuff. Let's not jump to conclusions, Mr. Naruhodo. Look closely at this soap. You see that it would fit together perfectly with the half bar on the table. What the? How can that be? I think that they are two halves of the same bar that broke apart. Huh, sneaky. Oh shit. Did we do that? Sorry, getting used to things.
Take that!
There we go. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course. The other piece of soap reveals the answer. It being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really. But no depths of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. The reaction. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, took only a single bite. That begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. Is that a little Kazuma on your shoulder? An excellent observation, Mr. Naruhodo, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. Blunder's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. Now we get the teacup. Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument then. Perhaps he's suggesting the man lick the soap rather than eat it. If soap in London is that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. There are no signs of any food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? Now it's the teacup. Yes, a Western vessel for the serving of infusions of dried tea leaves. It's a teacup, Mr. Naruhodo, as you well know. Stop putting on airs. And it's empty. Ah, so we've already established that the victim wasn't eating soap when he died. However, there's significant evidence to suggest that he was drinking tea. My thoughts exactly.
Take that!
There we go. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been the vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. It would appear that this victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in this room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the ingestion of poison contained in this teacup. Okay, a nice simple conclusion. Solved. And this is going to be interesting. Suicide or murder? The cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? Oh, twitch, twitch. You only need to recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? A single teacup suggests the answer. Aha, the Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our deductions thus far. Yes, we can imagine that shortly before his death, Mr. Shamsby was having a drink of tea. There'd be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me, Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholmes suggested. It's more to this deduction than it seems. We must closely examine the scene of the crime again for some more clues. Oh, is there another... Oh, hello. It's another Western vessel of... It's a teacup! It too is empty. Is there like an overly formal way of talking about tea in Japanese? That this is the localization that would be considered putting on airs. Given that he's actually holding this one in his hand, we can assume that it is the cup from whence Mr. Shamsby was actually drinking. But if that's the case, this changes everything. Everything we've deduced up to now is turned on its head. I have a bad feeling about this. I almost don't want to say it. Yes, I know exactly how you feel. Natsume had tea with this fella, didn't he?
Take that!
Again, another clever use of angles. Did this man dine and die alone? The other teacup suggests the answer. Whee! Spinning! Yes, there were 2 teacups in this room all along. Ah! In other words, this is the strong indication that the victim's last supper. There was a guest present. At the very least, we can say now with certainty that somebody else was here in this room last night, taking tea with the victim. What are you talking about? Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly, unreasonable. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more could we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Do you mean to say you know exactly who exactly was in this room at the time of the victim's death? Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. It's a convenient wine bottle at the end table right next to it. I'm not sure I like where this deduction is going now. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the halcyon days of eating too much soap. But the identity of the guest who was in here last night where the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. You can try to ignore your feelings, but you can't ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. Even Mr. Shamsphere didn't eat candles, it seems. We've already established that he didn't eat soap either. Do you think perhaps the guest brought this candle here last night? And if he or she did, does it reveal anything about the guest's identity? Good point. Think it was my idea. Stuffed out like that candle will be. If you sigh so deeply, Mr. Naruhodo, you're in danger of blowing out the flame. Oh dear, the latch is most definitely broken, isn't it? The door was kicked in by Mr. Natsume, according to what Mr. Garrideb told the inspector. Ooh, do his short, thin little legs had somewhat strength in them. I'm not sure the length of his legs is in any way significant here. Perhaps this says more about the poor state of the door than about Mr. Natsume's strength, actually. Be careful. If you overheard that remark, you will certainly have a lively response. I don't know. Can this broken lock really tell us anything about who was here? No, it was already broken. Pile of books. First glance, it seems that the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costumes. I overlooked these three little books initially. I wonder what they are. Let's see. Titles read... Picture of Monsieur Lecoul, Canterbury Yearnings, and A Meal for Cabreux. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. Could just be an incredible coincidence, but... They're the exact same three books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. What? Yes, the day of the unfortunate incident when Miss Green was stabbed. Soseki said I'd just been to a bookshop and bought them. That's right. Now those three titles are here in the room of the victim. Mr. Natsume claims never to have been here before. Well, what does this mean, do you think? I really don't know what to make of it. Familiar books. Grape juice. It's empty. Empty of liquid, but full of air. That makes you think, doesn't it? It makes me think that you're full of hot air. Makes me think about who else was in the room at the time. Bother. Susanoo-san's equipment response was cleverer than my original riddle. Glasses? Oh, I can't examine the glasses. Alright.
Take that!
Bonk. Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the pile of familiar books. Quite so. It's no mere coincidence that these three titles are here in this room. It's the link to the truth. Ah. Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at a second-hand bookshop. That's just coincidence. In that case, you will be able to bring this same three titles from your own room, will you not? This very moment. No, never, non-negotiable. You can't bring your own copies here. It proves that these three books are, in fact, yours. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returning to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could only have brought these three books here to the victim's room. Imagining the idea that Natsume just naturally traverses that way. That's just his normal walk cycle right there. Last night, having returned to your lodgings at the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there's only one possible conclusion. Victim died here in his room last night as a result of poisoning. And that same night, the victim had a visitor. And that visitor? Yeah, it stole my thunder. Was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume? This concludes the final act of Herlock Sholmes' great deduction. Huh. End of entry.